Welcome to another edition of Geopolitics and Empire. Joining us for the first time on this broadcast is Lynne Taylor of CommonCoreDiva.com. Lynn is a retired private educator with over 2 decades of experience, and since 2002, she's been a sought-after speaker, author, researcher, activist. I was just watching her recent interview by Sandy Adams, I think, on from UK Column, which was fantastic. She specializes in education. Welcome to the podcast, Lynn.
Well, thank you so much, Jorge. It's always an honor to be with you, and first time, woohoo!
Yeah, well, first time on Geopolitics and Empire. And for people who aren't aware,
Absolutely.
right? Yeah, you were a regular staple on my TNT radio program, which ran from March 2022 to March 2024, and so we spoke often on there. Unfortunately, I haven't yet had the time to upload all of the archives over on my Substack, but that's a work in progress. So eventually I'll have those all up and people will be able to go look at all of the archives of 2 years worth of my TNT shows. But it was a lot of fun, the TNT days. And so it's your first time on this podcast, and anything to add about your background that you want us to know about?
Well, since it's my first time on this particular podcast, if you're not familiar with my work, back in the day when Common Core was just being unleashed, I decided to take a deeper look because I knew it wasn't going to stay just in the public school system. So I wanted to find out, how's it going to impact homeschooling? How's it going to impact private schooling? And, K through 12 education wasn't where it stopped. We found out that it was a cradle to grave movement that's tied in with the UNESCO and Bill Gates agreement for a one world curriculum, for a one world order. And so through researching it, I've been able to follow all the ups and downs and ins and outs and twists and collusions and corruptions that I've seen not only our United States government participate in this kind of foray into globalization and creating a one world citizen, but I've noticed that other countries are happily going along with it as well.
Yeah, and just to go further on that note, I like to get, especially with guests that come on the first time, the sort of big picture take. And I think, a lot of my guests, not every guest, and, some people complained recently. I had guests of different ideological views on, and it's like, I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. That's what I did when I was an academic, and I have leftists on and people from the right and different categories. And they have, we got to look at these different views, even though, we see things differently. But I think you and I are on the same frequency, and most of the listeners for Geopolitics and Empire when it comes to globalism. And just real quick, maybe just to get your overarching view, many of us see that basically we're almost to the finish line of a one world government that is meant to be totalitarian, technocratic, occult. They have this Lucis Trust, New Age sort of theosophic Gnostic religion, and universalism. And in your case, they're working through education globally. Where I've worked, and I've seen some of the stuff you talk about. I've seen it at schools in Kazakhstan. I've seen it at schools in Mexico, in the U.S. And so, just before getting to the education part, what is going on, and who's behind it, and what are they trying to achieve when it comes to globalism and New World Order?
It's interesting you say that because there are a lot of players. You have, of course, our public governments, but then you have all these people who have private corporations and they love to throw their money around and they say, oh, well, I'm bored. Let me go over here in education and I'll just throw a few million and we'll just do A, B, C, and D when they have no business doing that. Then you also have the global political powers that have decided, oh, let's talk to all these rich people. Let's come into agreements that will force education to become what we've seen it become, which is nothing more than mind manipulation. And the whole goal was so that you could manipulate attitudes, values, and beliefs, otherwise known as social and emotional learning. But it didn't just stop at education. And why is that? Because the powers that be knew, like UNESCO and United Nations and UNICEF and all their arms and legs, to get the most amount of people in the shortest amount of time was to use education as the chief change agent. And once you do that, you can springboard it out into your culture, into your professions, into the workplace, into your religious circles as well. So what a brilliant move. Now it's evil as all get out, but what a brilliant move. Use that one widget to change everything.
And just to go just one further, what do you think is their ultimate agenda? Like a world government, and then what else? Or
Well, let's see here. I think from everything that I've witnessed, either in person or in research, is that the goal is to have you to become as mindless as possible so that you can become that compliant minion to do whatever you're directed to do. So your own thought, your own belief is no longer yours or even your family's or your culture's. It's whatever the be all end all wants it to be. And I think that's very dangerous.
and would you just on that point? I see them in that regard. They're succeeding in swimming fashion, because we're seeing a lot of people who have just taken their brains and handed it over. You know, we saw this during the COVID times. Oh,
Right.
the only experts can speak on that. I can't speak on that. It's like, is it sunny today? Well, or I don't know. I'm not a meteorologist, so I can't tell you if it's sunny or not. You know, it's
But
gotten that ridiculous. And then on
right.
top of that, you've got now the tech layer of Chat GPT, where people just like, hey, Chat GPT, is this true? Okay, yeah. I don't have to think. And so, how do you think they're doing?
Well, I think you're spot on. Yeah, swimmingly well and dastardly so, because you've got all this AI that's geared towards replacing what you as a human being can do. It's got to the point where AI is taking over how you look, how you sound. Now, my voice has a distinct accent, which is very hard to replicate. But according to everything that we're seeing, accents that are as unique as mine, or say yours, or anyone else we know with a very distinct one, that's going to be super easy. And so it's going to start putting words that we never said together so that it paints us somehow as the problem to be, first of all, reprogrammed, if you will, and second of all, tracked. That is absolutely evil. No longer will I be known as a living, breathing, God fearing person. I'm going to be known as a widget on someone's computer. It kind of sounds like me, kind of looks like me, but is it really me? And did I really say that?
I want to get to the tracking part later, but
Mhm.
reprogramming of our minds, and if you could just briefly touch on some of the things you've talked about for a long time, like social emotional
Um,
learning. People think, oh, that's innocuous, social emotional learning. They give these such generic sort of terms. Um, just real quick, how would you explain?
how I would okay, so how I would explain it, Rory, would be okay. Let's say you're raised in a family like mine, where you have a mom and a dad, you have brothers and sisters, and you know that the family unit is the be all end all as far as where attitudes and values and beliefs begin. And then you get out into the school system, or say you're homeschooled, and you get out into the culture system, and all of a sudden you start seeing, well, mom and dad don't know beans. They can't think their way out of a paper bag. Why would you listen to them? No, you need to come over here. You need to listen to this teacher, because this teacher, or this leader, or this think tank, or this philosophy is where you need to be. So we've seen a shift away from authority that was God created into an authority that's man-made and seeks to destroy the family unit as we know it, so that government can be replacing the parents for the nanny state. And I think for me, from what I've seen, it's all about social credit, social capitalism, social justice. Because if we can't get you, if we want to get you away from what you believe, which is right and good and trustworthy, we're going to shake our fists at you. We're going to threaten you, and we're going to militantly force you into our way of thinking. Because after all, that's the better way to go.
They always, if they want to change the system, they're going to provide some sort of
Right.
solution, which is what they're doing with all of these endless, UN and programs, social emotional learning. There's mindfulness, then they have all these shiny programs. The UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Real quick, if you want to um, comment on those before we get into some of your latest stuff. And if people just go to the website, I was just thinking about this today. You know,
Mhm.
a lot of us are familiar. You know, no poverty, goal number one. No zero
Right.
hunger, goal number two. Good health and well being. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. We just went through COVID, where all around the world, or you know,
Yeah.
UN, WHO participated in the simulations, you know, Event 201 or whatever, and then the implementation, Tedros the terrorist comes out and says, these are just recommendations. Come on.
Oh, yeah. Guidelines. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so in many countries, like, you know, we had in China was the case where people had their doors to their homes welded shut and they were starving to death because of UN policies. So if they have zero hunger, it's all inverted or Orwellian. So when they say we don't want you to be hungry, but we're welding you shut into your apartment, so you're
Yeah.
starving to death, that's a clear, perfect example of it's literally the opposite of what they're telling us. But they put on these rainbow colors and smiley faces and say, and you know, people have talked about this decades ago, friendly fascism. So when fascism comes
Oh,
to
yeah.
America or to the world, it's going to have a smiley face on it. So it's like poison that it's sweet. It goes down smooth, but then it's going to kill you. And then you think of like good health and well-being. RFK Jr. is coming out and saying we want all Americans to wear wearables, and then basically that's going to be used to siphon off, you know, your DNA, your it's going to be information to that's going to be used to control you, so on and so forth. And so, just any thoughts on the SDGs?
Well, aside from them being the biggest bag of BS and horse hockey I think I've ever seen in my entire life, you're spot on. They are the polar opposite of what they claim that they will champion. For example, quality education is sustainable development goal number 4. Quality in whose eyes, by whose definition? Certainly not by mine as a taxpayer, certainly not what I'm seeing from the people who legislate this. And, you know, for anyone who will tell you, oh, well, you know, Common Core's dead, that died with this legislation and that legislation, they're full of it. Because if you look at it, it's all tied to that global agreement that Gates and UNESCO signed in 2004 that said we're going to align the curriculum to the tests. So if you look at the PISA, the Program for International Student, whatever it is, and if you look at all the other alphabet soup names for all the different testing regimes that are out there, they're all tied to the same thing. And then they take that information and they funnel it through the World Bank of all places that ties to the World Health Organization and the United Nations. And they go, huh, well, this country's not doing exactly what we think they should be doing. So, yeah, we need to ramp up the sanctions, or we need to ramp up the thises or the that's or the others. And it's just like, so you're going to penalize people for not doing what you want because they wanted to exercise their freedom and not have their education system look like everybody else's. I mean, the last I knew, that's what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to be independent. We were supposed to be free thinkers who could actually put 2 and 2 together and come up with 4, or sit here and understand that critical thinking doesn't belong in preschool. It goes in high school when the brain has developed more so to understand. This is why we do what we do.
Yeah, and some people have been looking at how they're coming in for homeschooling, right? There was recent
Right,
reports of how now the national governments who are subject now to these super, we're, you know, I already say we're already in world government. I think
right.
the most recent example is U.S., where some states in the U.S. are bringing in the UN, UNESCO, whatever global curriculum program, and they want anyone homeschooling, they want
Mhm.
them to use the global curriculum. They want you know, they want families, homeschool families, to report to the government what they are teaching, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure they'll introduce some accreditation requirements. If you haven't taught, you know, this segment of UN global, I mean, and then they don't always say just overtly, oh, UN curriculum, but that's basically what
No,
it
they
means.
won't. They won't. And here's the thing, it's been like the frog pot for years with homeschooling. And the reason I know this is because I was in it. And that's why I said, who I need to speak out. This is going to come after us. And it has been a slow burn. It has been a slow turning of the pot. You had, I think we talked about this back on TNT, where you had the Model UN clubs that were not just in your high schools or in your universities. They were being held in homeschool groups. You've got STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and math. That's big. Because it attaches to Legos. And Legos, there could be nothing wrong with that. But if you look at the agenda behind why Legos went over to the science, technology, engineering, and math, you'll understand it's not about anything other than propping up the sustainable development goals. And people will hear that and they're going to go, but wait a minute, what's wrong with science, technology, engineering, and math? We need all those. And I don't argue. But when you put them in a marketed system for an agenda that you didn't vote for, that you didn't ask for, there should be questions, and there absolutely should. But the reason why that was done was to continue to promote the Sustainable Development Goals from within. Because if you're right, if you said, "Oh yes, take this UN curriculum," you're not going to do it. But if you say, "Hey, take this local curriculum that's by this world famous company," you're going to go, "Huh, okay, let me do that."
And we went through on TNT a lot of examples. It's like almost every month at this point they're running new schemes to onboard us.
Right.
You've been coming across recently stuff like this dignity index, peace circles. What's going on here?
Well, it's interesting because at first they don't sound like they belong even in the same room. Because if you look at the dignity index and you look at all the hype that's behind it, well, the University of Utah, in conjunction with this other political group, came up with this dignity index. And supposedly, what it is supposed to measure, it's supposed to teach, is that we have to move away from contempt to dignity. Now, what do I mean by that? Let me get out my little notes here because I wrote this down because I was like, people are going to think I'm making this stuff up, which I absolutely am not. Let's see here. Now, when you look at the index, instead of it being 8 at the top, which is where the goal is supposed to be, it's at the bottom. So at the top is number 1. So we're moving from red down to blue in your color scheme, okay? And don't lose the fact that color psychology plays into every bit of this. So red is supposed to be angry, contemptuous, all right? So here's your first level. Violence escalates from words into actions. This is how we're not supposed to be. Number 2, no violence, but one side will accuse the other side of being evil. Well, why are we defaulting to evil? What happened to just being different? Number 3, attacks the opposition's moral character. So we went for the jugular. Number 4, mocks or attacks the opposition's background, belief, and commitments. There's that social and emotional learning. Number 5, listens to opposition's views respectfully and explains their own goals and views. Number 6, welcomes the duty to work with the opposition and find common ground. Number 7, wants full engagement and to bridge all misunderstandings. Can we all sing Kumbaya about now? Number 8, believes everyone has inherent worth and will treat everyone with dignity, regardless of the situation. That's the dignity index. Now, why was it created? It was used as a model to test an election and the people who were voting for a federal seat in Congress from the state of Utah. It has since been trotted out into other organizations and being used as this is how we all need to be. And if you look at the website for this dignity index and the partners that it has, you'll see that we have people who are of other faiths and their level of priests running this, which is really, really like, okay, we're not going to do this from a biblical point of view. We're not going to do this from a Christian point of view. We're going to do this from a secular point of view, and we're going to pass it off as an alternative to what you believe. but we're going to preach it as this is how you have to be. Now, the political group that the University of Utah partnered with is the Hinckley Political Group. And you'll probably sit here and think, well, why in the world did they even come up with this? Well, supposedly it's supposed to solve problems, ease divisions, and prevent violence. Now, Havore, I don't know about you, but in the situations that were mentioned in the index, I don't normally default to words going from violent to actions. I don't even start off with violent words. Many of us don't. So why are these parameters set the way they are? They're going from feast to famine almost. They're not looking at the fact of, well, you can't put every situation that people are in into a neat little box that measures you from 8 to 1 or 1 to 8.
Yeah, and my reading is universalism. So what they're trying to do is, again, what they're positing is, it says level 2 accuses the other side not just of doing bad or being bad, but promoting evil. And obviously, I think there are, if you look at it from a biblical view, right or wrong, that there are definitely, it's almost like they're attacking this idea of sin. So it's wrong to say what someone is doing or what they believe is wrong or sinful or bad. You can't say that. It's basically saying that anyone can do whatever they want, kind of this universalism, and it's getting rid of, again, attacking these idea of exclusive beliefs and, a concrete right and wrong, like the Ten Commandments style. It's wrong to kill. So you can't say, oh, someone is bad if it's like it's almost like there is no truth. Do whatever.
There's
like
no truth.
Aleister Crowley. I was just thinking, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Just basically do whatever you want, and we all hold hands and sing Kumbaya and don't judge.
Yeah, there we go. But they're going to have a summit in just a few days where you can go and get your fill of all of this. I have no idea where the summit is, but they're going to have people pledge to uphold this dignity index. And if that's not bad enough, if you look at level 8, well, by the time you get to a level 8, Havore, you are supposed to be able to consecrate yourself. Are you kidding me?
Well, I would just go back to what you said. You said it was secular. Actually, no, I think this is a substitute religion. And it's a bit of a side note, but I think it's related. I was commenting with my previous podcast guests. The Pope came out, Leo, recently at a climate justice conference. I think I played the clip, putting his hand on a piece of ice, praying to the climate. And I pointed out in the
stars,
in the Old Testament, Baal was a god of, this false demonic god of, but he was known also the god, I think, fertility, but god of weather, which is climate, and synonym climate. Yeah. So Baal was the god of climate, and we have the Catholic Pope praying to effectively Baal,
a block of ice,
which is representing the climate weather thing. And now what they're doing is this substitute religion of dignity and all these other things.
But dignity's not a religion, and thank you for pointing that out. I should have said,
well, it would be like moral values,
not secular.
It's like substitute moral values.
Well, absolutely. But, and how the peace circles, now the peace circles come from the United Nations. And this is part of their year-long Hear Us Youth campaign. And you're supposed to act now for a peaceful world. And these peace circles are not only showing up at the United Nations, they're also showing up at the Consortium for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, otherwise known as CASEL. Now, the smoking gun between the CASEL and the UN peace circles is Timothy Shriver. His mother founded the Special Olympics, if you'll remember. So you can go to CASEL and you can pay big bucks to have these peace circles inserted into your school's curriculum. Now, are they a carbon copy of the United Nations ones? No, because you have to pay to see it. So I don't know. It could be a carbon copy, but you have to pay just to see it. Isn't that special?
I see a lot of these programs, essentially what they're doing is just inculcating in young people
Yeah.
Before they get to the professors like me who tell them about the secret history of the United Nations and the plans for global domination and global government, they just begin to accept as this idea of supranational global citizen
Mm-hmm.
and world government, and through peace circles and this program and that program and SDGs, and it's all got colors and it's all wonderful, and we have these
Oh,
activities
yeah.
with fellow students. And so when they get older, they're like, yeah, UN is cares for us, right? And
Yeah.
so basically they get indoctrinated and initiated into world government, and thinking that, I've interviewed a few times folks who are promoters of world government, and we always get to the question of totalitarianism. Like,
Right.
what if it becomes a world totalitarian government? And I think they're naive in the sense they think that can never happen. But I'm like, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. If
Right.
virtually on Earth, all local governments have been corrupted, I think all of us can agree that all national governments are pretty much corrupt to different degrees on the spectrum. So there isn't a national government that's not corrupt. What makes one think a world state and world government will not become corrupt and then eventually totalitarian? And so I think that's the
Right.
problem. Yeah.
Well, in this campaign with the peace circles, it tells you that half of your circle must be anywhere between the ages. Let's see, you have to be 30 or under. So half your group must be. No longer can you just gather your neighbors and say, hey, let's make a peace circle. No, you have to conform to this blueprint. You have to help create a manifesto for peace. Well, now that's kind of a oxymoron. A manifesto for peace? Okay. You're supposed to use your peace circle as a ripple maker by using social media, because after all, that's how we can make gender equality, and that's how we can make climate change, and that's how we can make sure that everybody has a place to live and food to eat. Okay. You also have to have an elder. So that would be people like us. We're not qualified to lead the group, Havore, but we have to be in one to kind of keep everybody on the same page. Well, that means that my elder has to buy into all this stuff, does it not? So I want you to think about how we've seen a shift from a classroom where the teacher leads to a classroom where the student leads. And 9 times out of 10, what happens? It's like Jimmy Neutron in the movie. The parents got zapped away for just a little bit, and the kids ran amok in the streets. And for the first little bit, they loved it. And then after that, it was like, I miss mom and dad. I need mom and dad. I can't do this without mom and dad. So I want you to think about the peace circles in that vein, because that's exactly what's going to be able to, or what the parameters are. So they're telling you how, they're dictating how these peace circles are supposed to run. How is that peaceful? Isn't that manipulation? And it will tell you that you have to have rural and urban youth. You have to have diverse gender, ethnic, religious, sexual orientation, linguistic. You have to have young people from all over the world. You have to have peace activists. And then if you want to have a peace circle, they give you the how to run it, because after all, you can't put together your own thoughts of how to run your own organization.
Yeah, these are. I mean, I've worked in education, and all the schools that I worked in, Kazakhstan, Mexico. The SDGs were on placards, well designed placards in the hallways. They were being incorporated into every subject matter. We were obliged to do Model UN, and in all of those schools. So basically, it's being infused everywhere, and then they run all of these different types of events. Just some of the latest examples of, as you say, peace circles, diversity indexes, this and that and the other. And just to go back to the SDGs real quick, you mentioned something earlier. I believe you've talked
Yes.
about on this previously. If we look, another example, goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. And so
Right.
I live in what has been declared a sustainable city or resilient city, which is a 15-minute smart city, which are effectively Hunger Game districts, dystopian Hunger Game districts. So they're actually building these systems of control like Hunger Games, but they've just rebranded them as sustainable. And in the near term, as they're building it out, no one's the wiser. It's fine. Once
Absolutely.
everything gets implemented, the digital IDs, cash eliminated. Like in the reports, they actually say pre-crime monitoring, all this geolocation
Absolutely.
that can shut you off. Once that is put into place, who's to say they're not going to take the smiley face off, and then we're going to turn from utopia to
Dystopian.
dystopia, and
Yeah.
then one of the other points was, well, just on the social credit, and that's effectively social credit. But John Kleizak and others, and I think you've commented on this, that in education today, and it seems to be worse in the West for now, like the
Right.
U.S. is centered, possibly Western Europe, and obviously China, where they're now they're unveiling biometrics to buy food, to enter and exit schools. This is coming into Russia and other countries,
Yeah.
where they're basically training the kids to accept and work within a social credit system in their school days. And then when they leave school, they enter into sort of the real world social credit. So just any thoughts on how that's being applied in education, social credit?
Well, it would be the second you take the school choice money, because we have said for I don't know how long, and John has done a terrific article on how the money is turned into social credit. I'll let him speak to that. But from the end that I know is that we warned a long time ago on TNT and other places that it's like putting a cash token on your child and going, okay, now let's track it. We'll track it from education. We'll track it to where it lives. We'll track it to where it works. And that to me does not sound like a free existence that we're setting up for our children. And as far as these peace circles, one of the ways they manipulate them is they cherry pick what targets, what issues you need to talk about. And then, do you remember the story prompts that you would give your students? Like you'd give them, an idea and say, okay, write an essay off of this story idea. So we're prompting our children, we're prompting these people in these circles and dignity and uh, social credit systems. We're giving them prompts by which to negatively impact with the rest of us, and then sit there and go, well, she didn't do that, so negative for her, or he did this, so positive for him. And it will allow you to move ahead or go back. It will deny you, like you were saying with China and failing the door shut. um, there are some examples out there that are just people would think, no, there's no way that could possibly be happening. But you need to get away from the mainstream media. You need to start looking at the legislation of what's going on in your area, whether you're in America, Mexico, Zimbabwe, wherever. You need to look at what's going on. You need to see what's happening in your town, because let's not forget the most important sustainable development goal is number 17, and that is the partnerships to build it all.
Yeah, and I've talked about that when I discovered my smart city. I discovered the partnerships. So the government was building out the agenda, public transport, all that, green agenda, and then it was being financed by Rockefeller Foundation, and then a whole host of NGOs, consultants, companies,
Right.
I'm sure UN agencies, and so it's the same formula writ large. And what was I going to say? Just on the point of what you're saying of the social credit. My experience 10 years ago, it's all being gamified, which gamification is basically social credit system. And in the corporate world, I think this is largely the case. So where I was working, they tried to gamify us. So they would tell us, if you do these, have these performance metrics, or you do this, if like we're little players in a game. If you do this and this and this, they instituted an actual system where you would get bonus points, which then you can cash in for rewards, free Starbucks, restaurants,
Right.
gift cards for the malls. And then I actually, this was before I realized all of this. I successfully gamified my classroom. I used Google, what's it called? The Google, the platform online that Google has, like Excel sheets or whatever.
Yeah.
And I successfully was able to socially engineer the behavior of my students, which I thought was a good way. So, every class,
Right.
students would go to the bathroom just to get out of class, and I would they would all choose avatars. There'd be a leaderboard. There were benefits. And if they didn't go to the bathroom, one of the rewards was, you'd get certain points. And I would track this all. And I mean, I kid you not, it was amazing because they all stopped going to the bathroom. This was incredible. Like, I actually made my students not go because, I mean, they didn't go because they weren't really going to the bathroom. They just wanted to get out of the class for a moment. And
Yeah.
they would get a reward because if you didn't go for the whole semester, if you didn't go use the bathroom, you'd get points. And then those points you could cash in to, get a free 100 on a quiz or get an automatic 10% boost on an exam. Things like, or steal my lunch or,
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
like this. And so it was fun, but at the heart of it, it was social
Yeah.
engineering, and I thought my intentions were good, but what we're talking about here, social credit into schools and globally for all of our lives. Eventually, it's going to be bad because you're going to
Oh,
have the Bill Gates is going to come in and all these guys, Schwab's and all their partners, and the people who replace them. They're going to say, you can't buy meat. It's going to be a neo-feudalism. No.
Well, absolutely. I've got a friend in England who told me that there's this one grocery store. They've literally started putting some things behind a glass that you have to do something to be able to get the glass to open. But as far as the gamification of schools, I know it. Yeah, it looks fun. It sounds fun. I've done an article. It's on my blog. I can't remember the name of it, but it was a few years ago. I did it because one of my nephews was going to a school where they were using colors to reward the children with like Starbucks gift cards or this or that or the other. So we're not having our children learn good manners and good behavior simply because it's the right thing to do. We're now sticking a reward on it. But that started back when you had the instant gratification. And we could spend shows on that because that's been played upon people for decades. You have to be instantly recognized. You have to be instantly validated. Everybody has to get an award. Why? Because you have to feel good about yourself. But why? Because so and so said I needed to be able to have A, B, and C, and D to walk through the door.
I was looking at your website. Like you said, there's just so much.
There he is.
To
There's
all
over
of
10 years of stuff.
yeah, and is there anything just for our purposes of this podcast, anything else that you're worried about that we should be looking at when it comes
I,
to
I
globalism and education?
okay, look at the collusion between your higher education systems and the entities that deal with real estate, with zoning legislation, because I just uncovered there was a private planning group that just sold this sustainable development software to a major university here in the United States. And that major university is only so happy to help align your town to the sustainable development goals. So watch for that kind of stuff. You also need to look out for groups like the American Planning Association, the National Center for Smart Growth is housed at the University of Maryland. So if you think education doesn't have anything to do with the sustainable development goals outside of goal number 4, wake up, honey.
And yeah, and just then, no, I've mentioned this a few times in the past, but where I used to work, the Tec de Monterrey. I mean, again, great place to work, but it was a private high school university founded in the 1940s by Mexican businessmen. But by now, it's become globalized in the sense of globalism and corporatized. Right. And Bill Gates and Hillary Clinton and Al Gore have. Al Gore came to our campus during the online ceremonies of COVID. Bill Gates and Hillary Clinton spoke at the online graduation ceremonies, and I later learned that the Tec de Monterrey, it's got 30 campuses all around Mexico. It's one of the top schools in Latin America. It's the only university in Latin America that goes to Davos and is affiliated with Davos. And then, as you're saying, just get to give my personal example, whether these universities you're talking about in U.S. or elsewhere, they're used as testing grounds, experiments. And, I later learned that my former employer's links to Davos, that you've got these corner stores like 7-Eleven. They're called OXXO here in Mexico. They're on every corner. That they were running the experiment of the QR code cashless OXXO's convenience stores, where you scan the phone to enter, and then there's nobody in there. You take what you want, and then you're charged automatically, and you leave. Well, the OXXO decided. Guess where they decided to put their first experimental cashless OXXO. It was on the campus in Monterrey, Mexico, of the Tec de Monterrey. So isn't it convenient
Oh,
that the
wow.
OXXO was running its first cashless? And then the article's reports were saying if it succeeds, we're going to replicate it to the rest of
Well, yeah.
Mexico. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, yeah, let's use education as the test dummy, so to speak, before we trot it out to everybody else, and that was one of the things that I was able to talk with Sandy very briefly. I can't remember if it was during our interview or if it was off air, but it was the fact that, the United Kingdom has laid claim to, oh, we created the mind space document. And, because that's a social manipulation from a government level. And come to find out, a lot of the legwork, a lot of the research was trotted out here in the United States through higher education systems, and then partnered with the United Kingdom to come up with this supposedly United Kingdom effort.
yes, yes, it's. I think we have to fight for the control of our children's minds from this stuff. I also want to throw out. I'm not an expert in this, but I've read about the Delphi technique, where they work through groups and consensus, and it's very steered and manipulated. So if you're with a group of people, basically, it's almost like Inception, the movie, where
Yep.
they strip away any dissent, and you sort of go. It's a variation, I think, of the Milgram experiment, where you just go along with the group. And even I sometimes, when it comes to some of my guests or people in certain crowds, because I'm kind of I like to get along with people, but we have to kind of be careful, be critical thinkers, and sometimes I'll maybe be a little too lenient towards some of my guests when I should be like, no, I don't believe that. So stop. But it's very insidious, and so yeah, they're using all of these techniques. And yeah, any other thoughts for us? What can we do?
Learn the fallacies, because by and large, the governments, the education systems, the people in charge of our culture know what different fallacies there are, and they use them against us. So if we could learn one thing from this podcast, it's to know what fallacies are out there. The bandwagon one is a great example. That's the one, if everybody believes it, it's still, if it's a lie and they believe it, guess what? It's still a lie, but everybody's on the bandwagon. So, if you're not on that bandwagon, well, shame on you. There's something wrong with you. We have to fix that. So that's why I'm saying learn what the fallacies are, because we're seeing a lot of red herrings. And that, for people who don't understand what that fallacy is, if you ever saw the movie Up, you remember the dog with the old people, and every time there was a squirrel, the dog would take off and go after the squirrel. So, people have a running joke, squirrel, and it instantly takes your attention from what's going on to what's over here going on elsewhere. So yeah, learn those fallacies, because by George, they are being used against us at a rapid speed, and it's only going to increase if we don't learn it and stop it.
And I just thought of the latest example of gamification against the supermarkets who say, "Give me your phone number and you'll get a discount." It's gamification.
There you
And
go.
then again, they paint it's like, and the cashiers are like, "But you get money. Why wouldn't you do it?" And they honestly can't understand. Again, they're in that UN SDG rainbow colors, peace circles world of like, you get free money. What can be wrong with that? It's like,
oh, it's not free. There's a string there somewhere.
it's totalitarian. They're taking your data to create digital twins, which then later they're going to force you to ration your purchases. But the lemming public, they don't see it.
But meanwhile, everything's hunky dory, don't you know?
Yes. And by the way, halfway, a third of the way through this podcast, a quarter of the way, my internet went down again. And I thank Lynn for waiting while I fired up this Starlink, this Technocracy. It's really going to be like the movie Brazil. It's just like listeners know that I had my issues. Substack gave all of my paid subscribers, which are my core support for putting the lights on and keeping the roof over my head. They decided to extend all paid subscribers 9 months for free. So I'm fixing that right now. The internet went out again. And it's just kind of like, it's so Kafka-esque. I just wonder, it's not going to be easy for them to implement the 15-minute city, I think. Do you have any thought on that?
Right. No, but we have to start showing up at the town meetings. We have to start looking into who they're hiring to come in and tell you, oh, well, your town's not good enough. It needs to look like every other cookie cutter box out there. Uh, because when we start doing that, we're starting to show them, no, this will not be an easy way for you to assimilate me into an existence that I didn't want, I don't ask for, nor would I care to live it.
And just you just made me think of Star Trek and the Borg. Um, Resistance is not futile. I think that's one of the points. And that's one of my
Right.
mottos: is resistance is not
I think
futile.
it's essential.
Yeah, no matter the outcome. I've cited I'm Imran Khan before, where if it's the movie like the movie 300, Sparta, if we're gonna die anyways, still resistance is not futile. Any final thought for us, Lynn, and then where would be the best places for people to find you, follow you?
Okay. Well, let me see. Let me give you my little zinger, and then I can give you where you can find me. It is my belief if I'm going down, if I go down successfully in their eyes, it doesn't matter to me because whether I win, lose, or I draw, I will leave them. If I don't annihilate them, I will give them the biggest black eye and the biggest sore whatever that I possibly can because that leaves a mark. People will notice and they will pick up and they will follow. So if we could all get in that mindset of, no, maybe you're not going to win this, but honey, if you can put up the biggest fight to give them the biggest black eye, why not? Because they're going to do worse to you. So why not fight for what you believe in? Fight for your family. I mean, good gravy. Why not? And as far as where you can find me, commoncorediva.com. No, I have not written anything in a while, but I do have a lot of interviews that I've done recently or uploaded there. You can always find me on Twitter X, whatever the heck they're calling it now, at Common Core Diva. I'm on Facebook at Common Core Diva 2023. And as always, if you wish to help offset any of the costs of whatever I do have a donate button on my website, and that would be greatly appreciated.